to express themselves at the party level, which is very, very critical. We can't take that.
No, you are wrong. You are wrong. The Electoral Act has made it very clear that you have three ways that you have your candidates emerge. You have direct primaries, where every member of the party votes, like we are going to do in ADC. It's a choice. These are the sort of things that the mainstream
So why do we give the choice? Because as long as you leave that option, we understand the back and forth that has been. But Ezekiel Yaito, you understand? I mean, we were here. We were here when we had the back and forth with the particular clause until that clause was included. And we know that the consensus clause that has been included in that bill just allows power to, a select few leaders. And that's what's going to constantly happen.
No. Let me tell you, I've been the national chairman of a party, and I'll tell you this. Globally, you can have direct primaries, you can have indirect, and you can have consensus. Now, what the current Electoral Act did was to make sure that what they did before on consensus is stopped. You just get inside and then they will legislate, everybody step down. We are bringing that man, which is autocracy, which is imposition. They said, no, if you have sold forms to 4 people, all the 4 people have to agree that we accept this man. All the other 3 must agree. If any of the 3 does not agree, you've got to go to the field.
So in the case of the APC, you think that there's some sort of agreement?
That is, they are still living in the past. They are living in the past. They've not come to terms with the current realities. That's why they didn't want this Electoral Act to see the light of day. When we sit down and do a synthesis of the current Electoral Act, you'll see that we've taken a bold step forward. It might not be everything, but we've taken a bold step forward. We could not all do direct primaries because there is no party platform. That will be addressed after this election. I've written a letter to National Chairman of INEC. There is a way to organize the party register of every party and put the membership in 3 categories: active financial, non-active financial, others. Active financial means you have your PVC and you've paid your membership dues. Non-active financial is that you have your PVC but you're not paying your dues. Then the third one, others, is anybody, including children, where you want to groom them on the ideology, philosophy of the party. Now, those that are active financial, they have their PVC and they have paid their membership dues, will all be voting members, delegates in every election. By so doing, you get people to pay party dues and you get every member of the party to be part of the leadership recruitment. That is the way forward. That is too soon for now. You can't have that register now. So let us manage this first process and get to the second phase. For now, I think Nigerians need to know that if APC and PDP are not willing to do the right thing, there is an alternate. And the mainstream media should also bring up this alternate, because there's too much silence about the third force, which is ADC. Don't dismiss them. Don't dismiss them. Bring them in the mix so that Nigerians have a choice.
All right, Mr. Nyaituk, let's move on to other things for sake of time. So all these in the news, practically all the papers picked up on his Lagos right. He has launched some sort of taxi scheme, and with 1,000 taxis yesterday. I also want to get your opinion concerning that. It's in the
government. I am one person who believes that government has every business being in business, because government must be the most organized sector, the most focused sector, because government has our lives in their hands. And Nyaito cannot afford to leave his life on the hands of somebody who is irresponsible. We must come back to seeing government and putting it on them to be the most responsible, the most organized, the most focused. If you look at Chapter 2, Section 14, subsection 2b, it says the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Now leave the second part, take the first part. The security and welfare of yourself, everybody, is the most important thing. And that is put as the primary purpose of government. Come back to my brother Obong Sanwo-Olu. You know, when he removed my friend and schoolmate Ambode from office, I was very, very unhappy. You know, Ambode and I were schoolmates, Federal Government College, Warri, and understandably, you know, secondary school is where you have like your best friends and all that. But I must say that just like Buhari has signed the Electoral Act and have forgiven all his sins, since Sanwo-Olu has come in, he's acted very well, and I'm very happy with him. Very, very, very happy with him. Coming to transportation, let him look at Ibom Air, for instance, in Akwa Ibom. Everybody, including myself, I was the first person that said that was absolute rubbish, nonsense, waste of our resources. I don't agree. When they started operating, I came back on air and said, I take back my words, I apologize, I'm very happy. Today, it can as well come in and play in that market and get a good chunk of the market share and give Lagosians, they can even as government be able to play down on the profit margin such that the drivers, the commission that goes to these boat people can now go back to the drivers, and there could be a relative regulation on the fares. So government has every business in kind of networking with the organized private sector to get this thing done. I don't know the modalities, but I want to say if the modalities is right, the Lagos state government would have started something that other state governments will emulate. And by the grace of God, if I become the governor, I will also emulate, because there's nothing new.
Let's get a little bit into this one. I mean, you still have some people who say government has no business in being in government. I mean, in being in business. Government should rather. Ezekiel Nyaitok, let's look at it this.
We are governors.
So because a lot of people would still say, and it's an argument that's been very valid, because if you begin to look at some of the enterprises and businesses that government has been involved in, I mean, it's really in a sorry state. So that argument will still remain that government has no business in being in government or in business. Rather, government should be in the business of ensuring that there's an enabling environment, provide security where you have the private sector thrive. And we have seen that, you know, as an international phenomenon and practice across board. But let's even calm down. I mean, it's a good thing that the Lagos state government is delving into transportation, thinking about it. But recent incident that has happened where we still hear the government saying, oh, we're involved and we're here in the back and forth with the BRT. The BRT would be the most safest. One would think it's the most safest. But the sad incident that happened in Lagos is one that has actually discouraged a lot of persons, even though you still have some people patronizing. And so with that, you know, thinking about that and looking at that situation and having this, what's the security? Because one would not think that elements would take over, you know, a system, a transport system like that, and begin to perpetrate evil. So how then is government good at being, you know, in business, or should government still really be in this business of transportation?
I'll tell you this. Google is able to track globally everything going on. Bolt is able to tell you all the streets in all the cities of the world. What am I saying? The power of technology. What the Lagos state needs to do is to have a camera in every car as a precondition. That camera is strategically located and must never go off. Anyone that goes off, an alarm is triggered and whoever is in charge is sanctioned. With that, you create a safe environment and that camera has night vision. Once you do that, you bring safety. You don't run away from problems. Any problem that comes, like I just thought of this, okay? It means that if there are people that are in charge of that transportation system and their own is safety in two levels, safety of the vehicle to make sure it's in check at all times. There's a checking manual, there's a center that services and gives you every 6 months, you go for accreditation. And because of the way it's done, you get in, they fix the system, you get out, then you have certificates of change of tire, if it's every year or every 2 years. In fact, there's a system that regulates that. And then you have a camera inside. That camera shows what's happening in that car 247. It's a tracker. When that is done, Lagos State government would have given us a system of transportation that is safe and can be subsidized, because the business of government is to make life easier for the people. What I cannot, and finally, let me say this, PPP is a global best practice. As of today, I am building one of the biggest estates in Akwa Ibom, in fact, in the southern part of Nigeria, where government is not putting 10 naira for any of the houses. And yet, they have an estate with full infrastructure and everything. Now, that is the way to go, PPP. So let this transportation be done through that PPP platform, and then it will be government.
I mean, not that I'm going to expect a response from you because we're out of time, but if PPP is actually that model that should be adopted, we still have some governors, especially in the South region, who have said we're going to adopt this pattern, but there's really nothing to show off.
Happened this day back in history. We'll take that and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Agreement. So in a case that the landlord wants to evict the tenant, in a case there's no tenant agreement, what happens in court?
Well, usually what the court will do, or what is expected of the landlord in that situation, is to look at the mode of payment. Number one, it is established, there is no controversy as to the fact that a tenancy relationship.
I think I would like to be an inventor, hungry, driven.
Or events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408, or send an email to marketing@PlusTvAfrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
Hey, what's up, guys? You're welcome to another edition of Plus Event, and I remain your host, Ifeoluwa Oshukeye.
Your absence isn't an excuse anymore, as Plus Event is all you need, as we bring you the glitz, the glamour, and loads of fun.
Oh, definitely. Right, no question. He's a living legend.
God forbid, Holy Ghost fire, I know.
I just want to be blown away. I want to be wild. This is 11 years of doing it.
I'm surrounded by so much positivity. No, it's okay.
Yo, what's up, my people? It's your boy Starboy Terry. You're watching
Plus Event. On Plus TV.
Stay glued to Plus TV Africa every Saturday and Sunday, 4:30 p.m. West African time.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am. If you no talk, dem go beat you. Na 2,500 they pay.
Welcome back. It's still the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Away from off the press, we'll be looking at an employee when the person performs work or services under certain conditions in return for remuneration. With the varying laws governing employment-related matters in Nigeria, some of these employment laws include the Nigerian Labour Act, the Pensions Act, the Industrial Training Act, Employee Compensation Act, Trade Unions Act, among others. Now, toxic workplaces in Nigeria have been a hot topic on the internet, with many revelations about the negative influence on employee-employer relationships. How much of protection does the employment law provide for the Nigerian worker? What does the Labour Act say about employees' rights? We have Mercy Agbo joining us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on the breakfast on Plus TV Africa.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so for quite some time now, this hashtag horrible bosses, has been trending all over the internet. But let's just talk about the employer-employee relationship. Ordinarily, it should be a win.
Of these laws, and the employees don't even know about these laws. They don't know about the protection they have under these laws. So employees are just too quick to sign contracts of employment. They are just the laws that should govern those employment contracts.
Well, okay. Well, some of the concerns that's been raised as regards, of course, in recent time, even up until yesterday, you had different sector of the economy. You had the entertainment as of yesterday. Nollywood was also on the space with the horrible boss experience and what have you. That hashtag still ongoing. And do you think that the laws that we have in Nigeria, just like we have mentioned in that background, still, protect and talks about or spells out some of these issues that a lot of persons have raised on the internet? Majorly, there's a word for it: toxic workplace, and that's been it. So you have issue where employees are verbally abused. You have all sort going on. So do you think that this laws that we have cuts across and protects the employers from this kind of, employees from this kind of hazards?
Well, yeah, the laws protect, and now beautifully, we have the National Industrial Court, where people can go and institute actions against the employees or workplaces. So apart from the toxic workplaces, the verbal abuse, the National Industrial Court rules also provides for situations of sexual harassment in workplace. So there may not be a law like the Labour Act, the Employee Compensation Act. There may not be any specific law regarding the sexual harassment in workplace, for example, but the National Industrial Court rules provides for steps, even as little as verbal communications, not just touching, not just rape, but where an employer is making some kind of verbal sexual advances to the employee, or maybe just sending nude pictures to an employee. Those cases can arise, and an employee can use that to sue or institute an action against an employer.
So won't you say that, you know, the laws that we have are not very clear? I mean, very explicit and very exact and definite about some of these issues, just like you have mentioned. Now, if you look at the hashtag, it's been ongoing, not necessarily having so much of sexual harassment, but mostly you have issue of maltreatment, you have issue of verbal abuse, confrontations, and the list is almost endless if you want to look at it. Don't you think that at this point we begin to say that the Nigerian law, the Labour Act, these laws are very, you're talking about the issue of ambiguity now?
Well, yes, so because most of the laws we have just govern compensation, money, how salaries are paid, and all of that. So they don't govern this part, just as you said. They don't really stipulate, they are not clear as to toxic environments. So I think that's another part the laws, our National Assembly and lawmakers should look into, because we just have some of these things are just embodied in the International Labour Convention, which is not yet ratified in Nigeria. So it doesn't have any legal basis because it cannot be relied. It's not an enabling law. So the National Industrial Court can just make reference to it, even though nowadays the National Industrial Court adopts it because of their powers they have under Section 254C of the Constitution, that they can, for best practices, they can rely placed to be legal in such a way that employers will not have a right to say, okay, so you don't have any case for me, you don't have a case against me, even if I do this or do that. So I think that's the first step, ratifying the International Labour Conventions in Nigeria, and also making specific laws concerning these things so that employees will have a right of their own, and then making these laws known to employees, because some of them, I'm an employee myself, so some of the employees, if you're not careful, you may just feel like, okay, I don't have any right, I just have to manage. And coupled with the economic situation in Nigeria, an employee may be scared to say, oh, should I institute an action? I may not have any job elsewhere waiting for me. So those are the things that should be put in place. The government should put them in place, make specific laws, clear laws that will enable the employees to know their rights and know that these things are clearly stated for them.
But then I believe it should be a two-way street. It should be a win-win situation. Employer-employee relationship, which is where the human resource management, come in. Because most times, most people just believe is, I work for you, at the end of the month, I should get paid. Shouldn't it go beyond just working for pay to a relationship of knowing about the mental health, other aspect of the employer or even the employee, so that there be some sort of symbiotic relationship?
Yeah, I got you. So aside being a legal practitioner, I'm also a certified human resource person, though not seriously in practice yet. So, but I understand the fact that for establishments that have human resource persons, they try as much as possible to ensure that they know the needs of the employees as regards the needs of the employers. Because definitely some workplaces are toxic, not necessarily because of the employer. The employees are toxic, amongst themselves. So you see an employee who is maybe a superior to the so a fellow employee, and it makes the place so terrible and
for the subordinate to work.
Exactly. So, and it's not necessarily, so the person can come out to say, oh, my boss is horrible, but when you look at it, it's not really the boss. It's a fellow employee.
Maybe a line manager or something.
Exactly. So if some places cannot afford human resource persons, some places just feel, okay, there's no need to have a human resource person. So in such situations, I've worked in a business not as it used to be. You want to know what's wrong with these employees. So in such situations, so it's a two-way thing. Apart from the laws, these employers should be sensitized in a way that they should know that, okay, the mental health of your employees is also something that you need to put into consideration if you want your business to grow. And some just feel, oh, I pay you, so no matter what I do, you have to work for me the way I want you to work for me. So aside the laws that govern these things, there should be sensitization, and there should be enforcement agencies that will put in place these things to say, okay, that like to look into the way we have NAFDAC that look into manufacturing and all of regulations. We have an agency that regulates this employee and employees, not just the labor union. You understand? You just have other agencies that will look into this and maybe go from company to offices to make sure that these things are put in place for the employees.
Okay, let's also look at it. You know, in the course of this conversation, you've talked about the fact that a lot of Nigerians are not in the know of their rights, you know, as a Nigerian worker. Can you please take us through, you know, what a worker should know? Now, let's not forget that you have the private sector.
Yeah.
You also have the public sector. Of course, you're talking about those who are working for the government and those who are in the private sector. Can you please take us through what, you know, Nigerian workers in different sectors should know?
Okay, so the Labour Act is one that governs, you know, everybody. And then apart from the Employee Compensation Act, which is basically about employees who got injured or have any issues arising from work. Now, basically in a workplace, especially nowadays, we have the contract of employment, which governs. So when you have a contract of employment that has all of those things stated there.
Which things?
Your period of work, your salary, your pension, and every other thing you're supposed to be doing in the workplace.
So everything has to be clearly stated out in a contract, everything.
Yes. So due to the fact that most establishments have the HR personnel right now, so even if it's not stated in your contract of employment, there'll still be an HR, yes, an HR policy manual that will stipulate it for you. But the Labour Act also stated that it states that if you're not giving such, there should be a written statement within 3 months of your employment. And that written statement should contain all of those things that you're supposed to know. It should contain the name of the employer. It should contain your work prescription. It should also contain your duration of work, if you'll be working from Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday. And the Labour Act also provides that for every week, you are entitled to 1 day rest. So you see some persons work from Monday to Saturday and they complain. Some work from Monday. So the Labour Act stipulates that you have to work, if you're working for a week, you have to have a 24-hour rest. That's 1 day. So luckily, some offices have Monday to Friday, where you have the weekend to yourself. So, but the mistake we often make as employees is we have a contract of employment. Most times, some people complain about working extra hours, overtime, and you don't read your contract of employment, because I know that there are some contract of employment that stipulates that Monday to Friday and every other time where you're supposed to work if the need arises. Something like that. There's a clause that is usually put in there. And then employees come to complain about working overtime. So that is why it's good for employees to know that, okay, before you sign any contract of employment, you need to look at the nitty-gritties of that contract you're signing before you have them, because there's an exception to everything stated in most of the things stated in the Labour Act. That where there's a contract of employment and it has been signed by the employee and the employee has a copy of that contract of employment, then some of the things within the Labour Act will not apply. What will apply will be the contract of employment.
Okay, but where it is not clearly stated about overtime, for instance, you're just told maybe you're supposed to do a 40.
The Labour Act also provides that where you're working for more than 6 hours in a day, you have a right to more than 1 hour break. Within that space of time, unless there's something, there are circumstances where that would it will be impossible for the 1 hour break to apply. So if you're working for more than 6 hours in a day, you should be able to take 1 hour break. And the Labour Act specifically stated that it shouldn't be less than 1 hour. So if you're working like that, you have a right to demand for your pay.
All right.
Okay, so let's begin to, look at the issue of salaries and payment. I mean, we talk about the issue of minimum wage. And if you are in Nigeria, if you've been following, the conversation, you know that Nigerians, especially those in the public sector, have been talking about 30,000 naira minimum wage. And some states are saying, oh, we don't have resources to pay. We cannot pay minimum wage because states are differently endowed and states have different capacity. Now, the law that surrounds or that talks about minimum wage, does it also, protect, or does it cut across, the private sector, or it's just limited to, the public sector?
For that, it's just limited to the public sector.
So there are no laws?
Yes, when you look at it holistically, it provides for just the public sector. So the private sectors, they have, because you see some employees earning 20,000 naira and they do so much work. It's just like a place in Lagos. You see employees earning like 20,000 naira, and in a month they spend more than that in transportation. So it applies to just the private sector if you look at it holistically.
Okay, but then again, like I said before, it is a two-way street. The employees have their right, and so do the employers. So just how do you strike a balance? How do you also ensure that the employers too are also protected from maybe some unwanted act or some unscrupulous act by some employers who may just want to use some loopholes and may not necessarily want to do the work?
Okay, so basically the rights that the employees have at the moment is just to institute actions in court. That is what they have at the moment. So, and the National Industrial Court is kind of liberal, in the sense that it makes so much laws, it has so much protection for the employees. So the only problem is just the Nigerian factor, in the sense that when someone thinks of how to institute an action, how long it will take before that action is determined and all of that, the person may just
No, you didn't get me. I was asking about the employer themselves.
Oh, the employer?
Yes.
Okay, so the only things the employers can do is to have a good welfare package for the employees. And that includes having an HR personnel in the system. So because that's another enforcement agencies should be there to ensure that these things are put in place. And then the employers there should be something that before you open an establishment or before you start a business, you should be able to have things in place for the employees. So because there are no eyes looking at these employers, they just feel like, oh, we can do anything we want to do. And at the end of the month, whatever we give to the employees, you take it.
So how do you put a human face to it? Because sometimes issues abound. People might feel disgruntled somehow. They feel maybe they are not actually earning enough, or maybe their pay is not commensurate with what they do. Or sometimes they just may want to stay off work because they feel they are doing more than enough. In that case, what should the employer be doing? Okay,
just like I mentioned earlier, I'm in a place where we have to get a consultant to come in. It's different when you have someone in-house that already knows these things. The person may not be, too quick to make decisions and all of that. So we had to go the extra mile to get an outside to consult someone to come in and look at the situation. So the person was able to come in, look at the employees, check what they're going through, listen to them. And at the end of the day, there was a kind of win-win balance. You understand? So the welfare of the employees were provided for, at least not optimally, but I would say 80%. And everybody, it's a win-win situation. The employee is happy, the employers are happy. There's a good output at work. So that's one of the things that employers can do in such a situation. And also checking for them to also have, because like I said earlier, employers don't have HR persons. They just feel, okay, if you're head of management, you can do the HR work, so just do it. So that is why we have the HR personnel.
Well, let's also look at it. I like us to, I think that we have actually stayed with the legal part of what the law says and the rights that are protected. Unfortunately, a lot of persons do not understand their right as employees, and on the other hand, you also have employers not understanding what they ought to do, and so it becomes a jumble and all of that. So a lot's going on. But let's look at some of the concern, because now that's number one. The big question for me would be, how did we get to that point as a people?
Well, I would start by saying it's the economy. Yeah, because
economy, in what sense?
Because,
is it something that just happened in 2022, or it's something that's been going on?
The thing is, when you look at the Nigerian situation, a lot of people are out there looking for jobs. And an employer can just say, oh, if you live here, you may not get another job in the next 2 years, 3 years. You understand? So they have that kind of,
orientation.
Yes, that's what I think. I think they have that kind of orientation that, yes, I'm doing you a favor by putting you here. So anything I tell you to do, you have to do it. And then the employees also have that fear that, oh, I should just manage this one I have instead of just leaving. So it takes someone who has a lot of courage to say, okay, I'm leaving this place. Even if I don't have a job, I'll sit at home till I get a better place. So I think that's the orientation a lot of people have, because people are out there looking for jobs and they feel, okay, if you leave within the next 1 hour, another person is there to replace you.
That doesn't mean you have to stay at the job when you know that you're not actually getting your utmost, and you're almost bullied. Sometimes we've heard of cases where employees are being threatened, they've been beaten by supervisors and bosses just because the employees feel that where they're working at that particular time might just be their last moment of hope.
So that is why we have the courts for people. So I think the basic thing is just for...
Are we talking about the regular courts?
Yes.
Or the special courts?
No, we have the National Industrial Court that deals with cases about employer-employee relationship. So it's so wide, their powers are so wide. So they have powers concerning this assault, battery, compensation, sexual harassment, as I said earlier. So anything that concerns employer-employee relationship, you take it to the National Industrial Court. And as I said earlier, they are so liberal with employees, because they are basically there for the interest of the employees. So, but the issue we have in Nigeria today is a lot of people don't want to institute actions against employees. In fact, a lot of people don't want to even institute actions for their rights. For the enforcement of their rights. So let's just depart from the employee relationship, even just your rights as a human being.
Case, yes.
Yes, a lot of people don't want to, and a lot of people find it hard to, talk to a lawyer about their rights. A lot of people just want to swallow it in and say, well, I don't want any problems, let me just live with it. So I think the basic thing is if employees will stand up to their rights to say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how. There are a lot of ways to institute legal actions against these employers. And in such situations, you realize when 2 or 3 employers start doing that, employers will take a backseat and they will try to meditate again to know what's going on.
No, but like this particular case that I mentioned, you have a case where the boy made this complaint, and he talked about the fact, we're talking about employees now. Yes. Employers beating up employees, and in this particular case, he was handed over to the police, and the police malhandled him, in the sense that they used wood, to hit him, and to a point where he had a gun pointed to his head. Quite sad. But you have also mentioned police or toxic bosses and supervisors and what have you. So it's really, really sad. We're hoping that beyond May, because every May it seems like we get to talk about the Workers' Day, but it feels like the Workers' Day is always talked about those in the public sector, and maybe the private sector is not even carried along in all of this. But moving forward now, what would you say would be the way forward for us as a people? Now, following that particular space, joining the conversation and reading tweets and comments from some Nigerians. Some people say instead of coming to the internet or coming to Twitter, that's the microblogging, platform, and begin to rant, why don't you quit? Do you think that, quitting a job, because you're in a toxic workplace or you're in a place where the working conditions are not favorable, solves the problem?
Well, I don't think it does, because that's the thing we talk about, talking out, speaking out. So I think, yes, if you feel the place threatens your life, your mental health, because a lot of youths today, we're going into serious depression And that is one area that is being overlooked. So I feel you can quit, but that doesn't stop you from speaking out. Because yes, this the hashtag horrible bosses, yes, you can move away for your own self, for your life, but you should also talk about it. Speak to someone who can help the next person that will be coming after you.
So what would be the way forward now? I mean, we understand that we're human beings. For me, I feel like toxic is, no place is actually toxic. For instance, this place is not toxic. It can't be toxic on its own if we are not toxic people. So when you have toxic people come to a place, it becomes toxic. And sometimes you have situations when you have the boss. I mean, when you say the big boss might just be the big boss doing his things, but you also have those in the line of, you know, duty, because they're toxic. It begins to trickle down, and it makes every other person very uncomfortable. So how do we now address it, understanding that there are a lot of people involved in causing toxic? You also look at government, what laws can be put in place. You look at the employees themselves, because you can't take them out of the equation. Like one would say, you have some employees who would frustrate the efforts of the bosses or those on the line. So in all of this, how do we address the situation? So we can become, you know, a better country. Because if we become a better country, then we have a better workforce. We have a better, you know, productivity level becomes, you know, top notch, and everybody's happy.
Okay, so I think the way forward for the government, we should have specific laws that provide for these things. And then, as I said before, there should be specific agencies that regulate this companies, establishment of companies or whatever. And then going down to the workplaces, I think there should be an orientation for everybody. So that is why the HR persons are important, because you see that it goes down and then the employees themselves are the ones causing the problem in the workplace. So there should be an orientation. The government should make specific laws. There should be enforcement agencies for these people. And then the employer should ensure that their workplace is a very conducive place, and in the sense that they should make sure, no matter how little, they should make sure they try and get an HR person that will be in charge of human welfare in such situation, even whether...
You're right. It is a win-win situation. It is about managing relationships at the workplace, even beyond the workplace. So when you take it home, when you come back to the office, you ensure that everyone is happy at the end of the day.
Sure.
Yeah, Mercy Agbo has been our guest, and she is a lawyer, and she has joined us to talk about terrible bosses and how the employees' right, and just how you can actually be better to your workplace. It's still a breakfast on PlusTvAfrica. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be looking at health. It's World Tuberculosis Day. Stay with us.
Do you know any female between the ages of 18 to 25 who is currently unemployed, or an undergraduate who is passionate about technology? Africa Agility is empowering young females between the ages of 18 to 25 with tech skills ranging from
product management,
web development, artificial intelligence, data science, digital marketing, machine learning, blockchain technology, agile, networking, and cybersecurity through partnership with Cisco. Here is your chance to learn these tech skills for free. We offer a variety of instructor-led and self-paced programs, both physical and virtual. To be a part of our programs, join our community using the details on your screen. Africa Agility is slowly reducing the poverty rate in Africa, one girl at a time. To sponsor a female or to donate to this course, visit donate.africaagility.org. Thank you.
Life can be fun and rewarding, but it also comes with some risk.
As in business, you win some, you lose some. And that's why you need to be wise in the choices you make. It's like placing a bet. Again, you need to be wise. Wise in choosing an innovative platform with the highest market options and highest odds ever. That's why Winners Golden Bet, the leader in online, in-shop, virtual, and live sports betting, gives you enhanced platforms that offer you the best chances of winning. For betting,
The wise choice.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. On the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
And this is The Breakfast and Plus TV Africa, time for the second conversation. Today's World Tuberculosis Day, and tuberculosis remains one of the world's deadliest infections killer. Now, each day, over 4,100 people lose their lives to TB, and close to 28,000 people fall ill with their preventable and curable disease called tuberculosis. Global efforts to combat TB have saved an estimated 66 million lives since 2000. However, COVID-19 pandemic has reversed the years of progress made in the fight to end TB. For the first time over a decade, TB deaths increased in 2000, that's in 2020. The theme for World Tuberculosis Day 2022, Invest to End TB, Save Lives. We're now being joined by Dr. Ibrahim Umar Gano with the Kano State Ministry of Health. Dr. Ibrahim Gano, it's good to have you join us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right. Let's talk about today. What's the significance of having this conversation, and what's the significance of today?
Today is a day that the entire world comes together, and always when we have this day on the 24th March each year, it's a day to actually talk about TB or tuberculosis, and to commemorate the over 140 years or so of a lifetime of achievement in the discovery of the causative agent of TB for TB or tuberculosis disease, that is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but to also look at the challenges faced by the world in terms of controlling and then ending the tuberculosis or TB disease. And it's a day that we always remember the number or the human lives that have been affected or infected by the deadly disease, which happens to be the second most infectious disease worldwide.
All right, Dr. Umar Gano, the world or Nigeria seem to be doing so well in the fight against tuberculosis until 2020 with the COVID-19. It as though almost all efforts, were just drifted towards, ending the pandemic. Now, what do we really have right now? What are the incident rates like now, specifically in Nigeria? Can you give us some figures to work with?
Yes, worldwide, from the year 2000 to date, a little over 60 million lives have been saved worldwide. However, with the coming of the pandemic of COVID-19, reverse has been made of over 10 years achievement in the control of TB. And that has really hampered the efforts being put together by all stakeholders, as well as institutions, government, and partners to curb the disease. This year alone, we are having a situation whereby a number of individuals have been affected or infected with TB, but because of the pandemic, they have no ease of access to commencement of treatment. And that has really affected a lot in terms of care and support for TB. In terms of burden, we are taking of Nigeria as the first country in Africa with the highest TB burden, as well as number 6 in the world. And being also hit by COVID-19, a lot has to be made in terms of making efforts to actually bring the information to the people and make sure people who have TB or have symptoms of TB come to the aid of the system in terms of getting diagnosed and treated for TB. More so, symptoms-wise, it happens that some of the features or symptoms of TB also happens to be similar to COVID-19. And that has to do with the risk perception and the communication in terms of people understanding that these symptoms that you have, it could also be TB or it may not be TB. So in essence, symptoms of TB also have similarities with COVID, and then in terms of investment, we are looking at a lot of attention being pushed towards COVID-19 as a global pandemic, but we have to also remember that TB as an epidemic is also there with us, and a little over 4,800 people are affected or infected by TB every day in the world.
Very scary statistics that you have mentioned, but let's come back to, the fundamentals and look at, with Lassa fever, you would definitely say, keep your environment clean, avoid the rats and what have you. And so with the malaria, you talk about mosquitoes. What should we know about tuberculosis?
What you should know about tuberculosis is that it's an airborne disease. It's a disease that is transmitted from one person to another, and it's a disease that is transmitted through coughing, sneezing, laughter, or even talking. And it's a disease that is affected by, or that is influenced by, in the nature of where people live, in terms of crowdedness, in terms of personal and environmental hygiene, in terms of good air quality, in terms of better ventilation and airflow. And it's a disease that, if not diagnosed and treated on time, an infected person or an infectious person can transmit it to at least 10 to 15 people every year. And if you look at the numbers, if you have 10 people infected by TB, they are not diagnosed and put on treatment, chances are they have the risk of infecting 10 to 15 individuals in 12 months. And look at the statistics. We are talking of a country that is the most populous in the African continent. We are talking of the most populous black nation in the world. And we are talking of one of the few countries in the world that has large population and then expanding population. So what we are saying is the rate of infection can be enhanced by the way people live and by the way people understand. So it's important that anybody who is coughing for at least 2 weeks or more should go to the nearest facility and get tested for TB, for example. And if found to be positive for TB, you place that person on treatment, because that is the only way you can break the chain of transmission and then stop the spread of the disease. Because an infectious person who is not treated on treatment, who has not been commenced on treatment, who is in interaction with other individuals, has the risk of infecting 10 to 50 people. And we're talking of people attending events, attending to activities in the world, in their daily activities, going to the markets, going to marketplaces, going to weddings, funerals, gatherings, in churches, in mosques, in other places, even in their workplace. These individuals who happens to interact with others and are infectious or symptomatic, and they happen to have TB, for example, they have the risk of transmitting that disease.
Dr. Ibrahim Umar Gano, can you quickly tell us what exactly?
By a bacterium. It's a bubble, so people who have the attitude of, for example, exposing themselves to places where you have risks for example, putting your lab at risk, or maybe putting things at risk that has to do with your system, your protecting mechanisms, your lungs, because it's an airborne disease, so it easily gets spread through the lungs. So when you have something that harasses or affects negatively your system, your airways, it can put somebody at risk. There are other medical conditions, for example, that can also influence. For example, the attitude of people, their way of life, for example, if you take alcoholism, for example, take cigarette smoking, take other medical conditions like diabetes, like, for example, heart disease, all these disease conditions and attitudes or behaviors, they can also influence and make ways or make it easier for the spread of TB among individuals, because it's talking about the rate of protection or the level of protection of somebody's airway to actually resist and actually contain in the event that somebody inhales the bacilli, because it's an instant that somebody inhales the bacilli. The bacilli will now have to undergo various changes, transformations, for example, growth and mutations, divisions, and then the bacilli will have to divide from 1 to 2, 3 to 4, from 4 to 8, like that. So those multiplications and actually growth of the bacilli is influenced by many factors.
All right, Dr. Umar Gano, can you actually be infected with tuberculosis and not really have active TB?
It's very possible. it's very possible. A lot of people have the bacilli, but they don't have the disease. That's what we call tuberculosis infection or TB infection. Those individuals have the bacilli and they keep having the bacilli in their system. Somebody with intact immunity, with no immunocompromised status or nature, can have the bacilli for as many years as possible. And somebody who has been infection that has stayed in somebody's system for quite some time, with depressed immunity, with so many changes either in body system or the status of somebody's immunity or protection, can also give room for reactivation of the dormant TB infection. And that is one of the reasons why it's important to always test and to always watch for symptoms in somebody. But somebody can have it, and somebody can have the infection without the disease.
All right, but then again, since you can be infected, I know it can properly be managed, but whatever happened or happens to an infected lung that's been affected with tuberculosis, over time, even if the person has been maybe screened to be free from that particular disease, would you still be able to use that particular lung after you've been cured?
Of course. That is the reason why it's always good to diagnose on time and put people on treatment on time, because the longer the infection, the higher the infective dose of the bacilli, the higher when somebody has depressed immunity, the more likely it has the possibility of destructive effects on somebody's lungs. For example, somebody who is already malnourished, for example, or has immunocompromised immunity, or is already aged, or has some other infections, or maybe disease conditions, or other medical conditions, and then has not been diagnosed on time and placed on treatment on time, they have chances of having more effects to their lungs, which can lead to, for example, other complications, which can be semi-permanent or permanent, for example, like fibrosis, or maybe disruptive lung disease, or other complications that may happen to their lungs. So they have also risk of having some maybe opacities happening in their lungs, or maybe having some consolidations, and those things can be destructive to their lungs in the long run, or even for many years in their lifetime, or even for the rest of their time. That's the reason why when somebody is symptomatic, it's always good to diagnose on time and place somebody on treatment on time, because one, you are breaking the transmission, two, you are preventing the possible long-term effects of the infection in somebody, and then you're also having to mitigate or minimize any possible side effects or drug-drug interaction that somebody may have, because that person who may be having symptoms of TB, if in the event that person has TB and is being diagnosed on time, will now prevent the other, probably other medical condition that somebody is on, or maybe some other medication that somebody may be on, because it's good to remember somebody can also have TB infection while on other treatments or other diseases. Yes.
Yes. So as we begin to close this conversation down, I know that you have mentioned persistent cough or coughing as one of the symptoms, but which might not necessarily be until the individual gets tested. So you have mentioned symptoms. What are the symptoms, likely possible symptoms that one could look out for the case of TB?
Yes. So it's important because cough is the commonest symptom, but there are individuals who may not have cough for that time we said. So it's important to remember cough is one of the symptoms. Other symptoms for TB are fever, weight loss, or night sweat. You call it drenching night sweat because it's usually at night, though some may even have sweat during the daytime. But with weather conditions and things like that, you find out that there are some level of sweating that somebody experiences that are within the normality. But cough, fever, weight loss, night sweat, these are the cardinal symptoms of TB. And anybody with these symptoms should go to the nearest hospital for testing. And it's also good to remember that somebody may have extrapulmonary TB because there is a TB infection that affects only lungs, as a primary source of infection, but there is a kind of infection that affects other systems in the body. For example, kidney, liver, abdomen, intestine, all those, even brain, joints, bones, and even spinal cord, or even the spine. So these are other body parts that can be affected by that can be affected by TB infection. And when somebody has other systems affected by the TB bacilli, symptoms related to those areas would also be manifest in addition to cough. So that's why other constitutional symptoms for TB, weight loss, fever, and night sweat should also be considered when somebody comes and presents to the facility with this history of cough and then with other symptoms in the body. Some may even cough blood, and then the other, some may even have weight loss, or maybe chest pain, or maybe back pain, especially when they cough. So all these symptoms happen, and then when they happen, we should always think of TB, and we should always go to the nearest hospital for testing.
All right, Dr. Omar, just before we go, the theme for this year is Invest to End TB Saves Lives. So it brings me to the question of management and, treatment for TB. So far, how accessible is it for Nigerians? Is the treatment affordable? Do Nigerians have access to this quality treatment for tuberculosis?
All right, so it's good to remember that there are two phases to this very important point. One, TB is an infectious disease that can spread from one person to another, and there's a global effort to contain the epidemic, and Nigeria has been party to that, and then as part of the United Nations high-level mission, as well as commitment of the entire countries in the world to end in TB by 2030, and then in line with the Sustainable Development Goal of 2035. The universal push to ensure every person in the world has uninterrupted access to high-quality anti-TB drugs is being implemented in Nigeria. What am I saying? Every person infected with TB has to be placed on the standard WHO recommended treatment for TB, which is provided at no cost to the patient. But it's not at no cost to the patient because governments and partners globally and in this country have put hands together, put resources together from diagnosis to treatment. Secondly, with the pandemic of COVID-19 now, we know the investment for TB is still inadequate, and then with this pandemic and the reversal of 10-year gains of TB control efforts in the world, it calls for more investment, more resources, more money in terms of awareness creation, in terms of sensitization, in terms of programs like this that will make individuals to be aware of TB and the ones that have symptoms to come for treatment, in terms of more investment for diagnosis, because we know our equipment for TB diagnosis are not covering the entire places in the world and in the country. We can do more for that.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim Omar Gano. Thanks for your thoughts and thanks for all that you have shared concerning tuberculosis as we celebrate the day today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, Dr. Ibrahim Omar Gano is with the Kano State Ministry of Health. And that's the size of the show for today.
If you missed out on any part of the conversation, it's all right to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel, PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. Many thanks for watching. I am Messi Popo. See you tomorrow.
And I'm Justin Kadunye. Stand by for the news, top of the hour.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on Plus TV Africa as he probes deep in search of solutions.
inside the Niger Delta with Mamode Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
In raising our kids, parents should stop playing God.
The internet is actually using the people.
But when you are looking for money to help other people, then it becomes easy.
Don't rush into marriage. I always say this. You rush in, you rush out.
Family is the bedrock of every society and the essence of life.
On Today with John and Helen, we dig deep into family values in every sense of the word.
Join us every Saturday at 9:15 a.m. on PlusTvAfrica, DSTV channel 408.
With you, we play a part in strengthening the values passed from generation to generation.
Everyone talks about getting their dream jobs, but what does it take to get that dream job? In a religious society like Nigeria, some people resort to prayer, but did you know that sometimes the only reason you're not getting the job isn't because you don't have the credentials? Many times about how well you can defend your credentials through your presentation and communication skills during the interview. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the rate of unemployment in Nigeria rose to 33.3% in December 2020 from a 27.1% in 3 months. Interview phobia is a major issue that contributes to unemployment in the country. Some individuals are employable but don't know how to express themselves properly, present their resumes, and network effectively. An expert spoke to us about interview phobia and how it has increased the rate of unemployment within the country.
Okay, so I mentioned I struggled. I went to Lagos State University, public university. Nobody taught you any of these things. And so I thought that if I come to the interview space, I would do well because I know I'm good enough. But coming in, it was difficult. I got plenty of rejections. And I made up my mind that if you can get past this thing, you would help other people who are also like you. And so sitting down in that space, I also see people like me and I feel for them.
According to Student Graduate Report, more than 50% of graduates in Nigeria disclose that communication skill is the least skill their academic education prepared them with.
Like we have a compulsory NYSC every year. I believe the government or the educational sector should do something like when they know somebody's in their final year, maybe they allow them go through a month or so, or they introduce a course and make it mandatory for them to be able to go out there and face the outside world when it comes to interviews, when it comes to networking and all of that. I've seen super amazing, intelligent people lost opportunities because they were not confident, and those who were not so smart but have built their confidence are able to get the job and get these networks and get these opportunities. Especially when you come from a Yoruba or Igbo family where you don't have to look at your dad in the eye. You get that kind of thing. So you have to learn to look at people in the eye when you talk to them. It makes them believe that you are not up to something. You're not hiding anything in your cupboard.
We're going to school or having to attend different schools, all right? They just teach us we only have syllabus on what they've been doing so far in past years, and there's no trend of bringing in new things.
So the next time you complain about not getting a job, think about how well your CV is prepared. Assess your communication skills during the interview and think about how well you presented yourself.
that the fire outbreak spread.
The fire opens up a portion of the bridge, signaling danger as firemen from the state and other officials try to extinguish the flame. Traffic is rerouted from here to other roads. The result is this horrific gridlock. Akpongwon Bridge is cordoned off as the State Emergency Agency, led by the Permanent Secretary, Femi Osayintolu, talks tough for the evacuation of containers under this bridge.
We are removing the containers. We are moving in to the source of the inferno. And with that, there is no casualty, there is no mortalities, and we are on top of the challenges. However, we have a stakeholders meeting with all the people that were involved. Federal Ministry, Lagos State Ministry of Works, Lagos State Environment, and we have decided that we've given them 7 days ultimatum. After this 7 days ultimatum, any container that is found wanting will be removed.
The representative of the Minister of Works and Housing arrives in company of other officials disappointed at the damage.
Let me repeat myself and make it clear, lucidly clear. From today, the 30th of March, every occupant under our bridges, all our bridges, we have over 20 bridges in Lagos alone, should move. They have been given 7-day ultimatum to move away. After the 7th day, the task force will pound on any recalcitrant element we find under the bridge.
So we're working with the Ministry of Environment that will be responsible for ensuring that the market people that need to be evacuated will be evacuated. Those that don't need to be around will be moved, and I'm sure they will find a location for them. But from a transport point of view, it's very important that we evacuate this place. Safety is paramount. We need to think of the safety of our people first, and then we can then look at other things later.
It is not clear what caused the fire, but officials have advised motorists to use alternative routes, as Akpongwon Bridge would have to be shut, integrity tests carried out before repair works can begin.
Now, President Muhammad Buhari is met with the APC governors at the presidential villa, Abuja. The meeting is believed to be focused on ensuring the ruling party holds a successful national convention on Saturday.
Consensus is in accordance with the democratic tenets, and once you have leaders who are established, who are working towards the same goal, yes, we might have our individual differences, like was once carefully explained by Governor El-Rufai, but on the principle of ensuring that we get leadership that will hit the ground running, we are united. And to that extent, we will support any process that will lead to consensus and the emergence of leaders without the need for election.
We're still talking party politics. Former governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari, says he is still in the race for the All Progressives Congress APC national chairmanship, contrary to speculations that he has stepped down. Yari, reacting to media reports that the party had already zoned the position to the North Central, said that he was not aware of any zoning arrangement. Meanwhile, the Deputy Senate President, Ovie Omagege, says that the APC is at the crossroads.
It's become necessary for me to come and interact with you and solicit for your support. I believe strongly that we are going to get the results and the end result by 2023, inshallah. It's our hope, despite the fact that the man that used to come within 12 million votes will not be in the ballot paper, we can still do more to reproduce another president for this party, inshallah. So our hope is to get the leaders that will move this party forward and also to take us out of the issues that we are in respective states.
We want a leader that can speak truth to power, a leader that has the capacity to arrest and bring together every ego, a leader that will make us understand that collectively we are bigger than our individual selves.
Now the race for who leads the APC now thickens. The former Deputy National Chairman of the defunct
in bringing about what no party has been able to establish successfully in Nigeria, a progressive institute of Nigeria. Where we will be able to partner, sit together with you, and be able to organize, to cross-fertilize ideas on how to move not just the country forward, our politics and our way of operation as a party. I want to also assure the honorable members here and those who are not here that if given the opportunity to lead APC as a party, especially in this trying moment.
In a related development, former governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari, says he is still in the race for the All Progressives Congress national chairmanship, contrary to speculations that he is of the president of Nigeria for it.
I want to focus on 5 key areas: unity of Nigeria, security, economy, education, and developing more resources and powers to the Federation. The unity of Nigeria has never been threatened as it is today. Nigerians are losing hope in the oneness of this country. My fellow Nigerians, I am the unifier.
You're watching the news on Plus TV Africa. We'll take a quick break and return with more.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them. If you no talk, then go beat you. Now 2,500 and they pay.
Welcome back to you're still watching News Brief on Plus TV Africa. Now, residents of Imo State are reacting to the continuous insecurity in the region. That's on Street Views. Take a look.
For the past few months in Imo State, we've been experiencing a lot of insecurity, talking about the unknown gunmen and the burning of houses and the setting of some places ablaze. Yes, is an act condemnable that every citizen of Imo State should condemn. It's true that the government has actually not come out on the open to fish out the perpetrators of this dastardly act. But as a matter of fact, they have made a kind of serious insinuations about people they are alleging that they are involved in this act. But we have to still urge them, as a matter of fact, because we are citizens of Imo State. Our lives are in danger if they don't act fast. We want to call on the government of Imo State, led by the distinguished Senator Hope Uzodinma, to step up actions towards ameliorating the situation, because the situation we have at hand is very precarious.
You see, that's the story on insecurity. You can see so many persons who are patriotic Nigerians have separately condemned such art. It is not good now. It is not good. But these guys are doing this thing for one or two reasons, which I know government is aware why they are agitating and doing these things. I'm not in support of what they are doing. It's not good. This is our own property. It's our thing. We should, guide our team judiciously instead of, taking them to destructions.
Our system is balkanized, and what I will only advise the government is to get to the root of it. They should call these boys, they are our people. Nobody should pretend that they are not known. Nobody is unknown. These people are coming from homes, communities.
Now, the immediate past political advisor to Governor Nasir Ahmed El-Rufai and Campaign Director General Ben Kaduna State Chairman of the new political party.
And to end the lingering insecurity.
Can visit Abubakar in Zaria. During Salah, they will eat, they will smile, and Abubakar will go as far as to Sanga and sit with Peter during Christmas, exchange pleasantries, where confidence will be rebuilt in the entire people of Kaduna State. And with God, we are going to achieve that. One thing we are going to assure the people of Kaduna State, this is a government that will be listening. This is a government that will work closely to the people.
I don't have to tell you that this is the way the party is going. As you can see, they say seeing is believing. I believe we've seen, and inshallah, by the grace of God, it is not by our power or our might, but by the grace of God.
Now, the flag-off ceremony of the indigenous survey and charting of Nigeria's offshore waters by NNS Lana has taken place in Beecroft, Apapa. The Minister of Transport was the special guest of honor. He spoke on the importance of this move on our waters, as this would greatly help accelerate the rate of Nigeria's socio-economic growth. It will also enhance maritime safety and security. Now, the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo, spoke on the creation of jobs and economic viability it will bring to the country.
After 35 years of active service, these personnel are reintegrating into civil life. They were also equipped with vocational and general management and entrepreneurial skills of their choice by the Nigerian Armed Forces Resettlement Center, Roshodi, for 3 to 6 months in gaining active knowledge from various Stream 1 courses. The Chief of Naval Staff deemed it fit to honor the pre-retired personnel as the special guest of honor. He spoke on his expectation of these personnel as they leave the service.
Today is indeed a memorable event, considering that you all started your careers in the armed forces of our great country some 30 to 35 years ago and served meritoriously with unblemished records. Again, the successful completion of the training at the center, which prepares you for your integration into the civil life, is yet another milestone.
The Chief of Naval Staff deemed it fit to honor the pre-retired personnel as the special guest of honor. He spoke on his expectation of these personnel as they leave the service.
Though they are going into the reserve list and they may be called upon to render certain services as the armed forces of Nigeria are deemed fit. But again, they have a better life ahead, because as you can see across the graduating personnel, they are still very young.
The 38th Commandant of the Resettlement Center, Vice Admiral Idigam Zolubo, also encouraged the retirees on the best practice after military service.
I therefore charge you to remain dedicated, disciplined, and maintain the highest level of integrity with which you have served all this number of years in your various services.
The retirees, comprising 258 from the Army, 59 from Navy, and 12 from Air Force, were sent off at this well-attended ceremony held at the Nigerian Armed Forces Resettlement Center in Afrique, Oshodi, Lagos, witnessed by their families, friends, and colleagues. They are expected to reflect the good trainings of the military in their civil life. Destiny Momo for PlusTvAfrica.
And now to other parts of Africa. 3 Ugandan government employees, including one of the country's top geologists and 2 military personnel, have been killed by gunmen. This happened in the mineral-rich Karamoja region, according to military officials. The remote and impoverished region bordering Kenya and South Sudan has been plagued by decades of insecurity, with widespread banditry and inter-clan cattle rustling. The city has a number of other problems, such as the lack of access to water, the lack of access to sanitation, and the lack of access to health care. Now, Poland is expelling 45 Russian diplomats suspected of working for Russian intelligence, the Foreign Ministry announced on Wednesday. Earlier, Special Services spokesman Stanislaw Zarin of Kent at the age of 84. Albright fled the Nazis as a child in her native Czechoslovakia during World War II, then served as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations from 1993 to 1997 in the United States. Now, President Bill Clinton's administration. He then nominated her to become the first female Secretary of State, and she served in that role from 1997 to 2001. Leaders, diplomats, and academics remembered her as a trailblazer on the world stage. U.S. President Joe Biden said Madeleine Albright was a force. She defied convention and broke barriers again and again. Now, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has reiterated support for Ukraine, and if freedom had a name, it would be Ukraine. She spoke in an address to the European Parliament ahead of an EU leaders summit that starts today. Now, von der Leyen said she aimed to secure a commitment from the United States for extra supplies of liquefied natural gas for the next 2 winters in talks with President Joe Biden in Brussels. Now, first, this summit comes at the 1-month mark of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
In Berdyansk, in Melitopol, they are waving their blue and yellow flags in the faces of the occupying soldiers. And they haven't stopped, even after Russian soldiers have beaten them and shot some of them down. Honorable members, if freedom has a name, its name is Ukraine, and the Ukrainian flag is the flag of freedom today. Tomorrow I will discuss with President Biden how to prioritize LNG deliveries from the United States to the European Union in the coming months. We are aiming at having a commitment for additional supplies for the next 2 winters.
And finally, in sports news, with all the attention still firmly on world #1 Ash Barty's abrupt retirement, Japan's Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff of the United States heaped praise on the Australian during a news conference at the Miami Open on Wednesday. Barty, a 3-time Grand Slam winner and twice champion in Miami, announced she was retiring from tennis at the age of 25, just 2 months after she picked up her 3rd major title at home in Australia, stunning competitors at the Masters 1000 tournament.
But yeah, I feel like really happy for her. I know last year was quite tough.